Joining us for more on this is Joseph Humire, Executive Director of the Center for a Secure Free Society and a Senior Fellow at the Gatestone Institute, speaking to us from Washington, D.C. And Joseph, just very briefly outline us just the depth of the relationship, especially in the areas of security that currently exist between Iran and Venezuela.
Yeah, well, Iran and Venezuela have a very long extending military relationship that goes back 16 years. It began with a kind of a military-industrial partnership where they would do joint programs on military technology, military logistics, and obviously it's continuing into arms transfers and arms shipments. So the Iranian military, particularly the IRGC, and their presence in Venezuela is not new. They've been there and they've been building their capabilities for a long time inside Venezuela. And I think this is a logical next step for them. However, that said, it's clearly an act of provocation, not just to the United States, but to all the Western Hemisphere that aren't used to this kind of Iranian presence in this side of the world.
Right, and just talk about what that, let's a little more detail about what this step entails. I mean, what would that benefit to Venezuela to be getting? There are reports there might be these military patrol boats on one of those larger ships. What would the Maduro regime be gaining out of what could be in those vessels?
So like the Iranians, the Maduro regime aren't very strong in conventional military capabilities. So their Navy isn't a very conventional Navy, and it wouldn't have much of a threat in a conventional sense to other navies in the region. However, they have been building up their asymmetric naval presence, and I think that's something that Iran has a lot of experience and practice with, using small boats to do storm and swarm attacks against larger naval vessels, using drones to basically harass naval ships and other type of transfers, and essentially building this asymmetric naval presence in a way that Iran has done in the Strait of Hormuz. But to be able to do that to the Panama Canal, I think is where this is heading, or this is where they want to take this, which would obviously be a clear threat to U.S. commerce, U.S. shipments that about approximately 60% pass through the Panama Canal.
Right, and Iran, we've seen, it looks like they're probing a bit, reports that they've been for a few days off the coast of South Africa, maybe weighing it. How far do you think Iran go? Now that we've had a clear public warning from the Biden administration, do you think Iran is ready to actually send those ships into the open waters of the Atlantic on a straight line to Venezuela?
So what it appears like the original plan was to arrive in Venezuela this week. And there's obviously multiple strategic benefits with the messaging, with the nuclear talks and everything like that. But the other reason was very practical, in that on June 12th, the United States, along with 20 plus other countries, are going to hold one of the largest multinational training exercise, military exercise in the Caribbean, in the neighbor to Venezuela, in Guyana. It's called Trade Winds. It's an exercise that's done every other year. And so I think the Iranians were coming specifically for that. Now, what I'm hearing is that because of diplomatic pressure, other pressure, they're slowing down that voyage, and I believe they're going to probably arrive a little bit later, most likely in July. That doesn't mean that they won't come, but I think the pressure is working at least to slow them down, because to have the presence of these Iranian warships at the same time, you have not just the United States, but you have France, you have Canada, UK, and about 20-something Caribbean countries in the same naval waters, could provoke all kinds of scenarios that aren't good.
It certainly would. So what do you think the Biden administration is going to do? Now, I'm going to bring in the fact that there have been a lot of unexplainable incidents or mysterious explosions on Iranian ships. Some, for example, reportedly bringing oil in violation of sanctions to Syria. Some of the credit for that is going to Israeli intelligence services. We don't have any evidence of that. I mean, what do you think the course of action for the Biden administration would be if the Iranians proceed? Something along those lines, or would the Biden administration be better taking a clear public military intervention, preventing those ships from reaching the shores of Venezuela?
This is going to be a test for the Biden administration, because if they don't do anything about this Iranian naval presence in the Western Hemisphere, it's going to come back. And it's going to come back not just with the Iranian Navy, it's going to come back with the Russian Navy, it's going to come back with the Chinese Navy. Iran, Russia, and China have been building interoperability and joint capabilities, specifically with their navies, since December 2019. They held a big training exercise in the Gulf of Oman. They held another one as recent as February of this year in the Indian Ocean. And they're building that capability to be able to take it to the Western Hemisphere. So if he does nothing this time, that's a clear message of weakness that I believe the Iranians and other adversaries are going to take advantage of in the future. Now, what can he do? My advice to him would be he should work with our partners, the Brazilians, the Colombians, the Guyanese, and the others to build a maritime security initiative, something that was on the books more than 15 years ago that kind of got whitewashed a policy, but he should rebuild that to be able to make it clear that certain foreign adversaries aren't permitted to come into Caribbean waters.
Right, and I'll remind our viewers, maybe especially not from the U.S., there's something called the Monroe Doctrine that the United States has observed for a couple of centuries now, basically saying foreign powers outside of the hemisphere should not be involved in any kind of military activity. Certainly there in Latin America, and we'll see, as you said, maybe a test of the Monroe Doctrine coming up. Joseph Humire of Center for a Secure Free Society, thank you for that.